Today, we're at the History of Science Museum in Oxford, a very special Museum Monday. We're going to see the oldest museum building in Britain and a wonderful collection of scientific instruments around the world, but particularly from Oxford University colleges. We head inside and there's a small amount around the entry is a small shop, ticket office, some staff explaining things, and there's a series of fascinating instruments, quadrants, Qibla measurers from Islamic science, different sighting mechanisms. You can see there sextant. All these beautiful brass instruments. Really lovely collection. Different types of astronomical measures. And here is a tool that uses prisms to split light. Interesting models of the universe, telescopes, tubes, particularly for measuring astronomical features like the spectroscope on the right there. Some beautiful pieces, mainly from the 18th century in this cabinet, but some beautiful 19th and 20th century pieces. There's a model here of the current museum, an explanation of their vision, which the current building was built for the Ashmolean Museum before it outgrew it. And the idea is they're going to wrap the front in glass, build an extra floor downstairs, really expand it, and create a modern museum that's capable of handling the collection they have and displaying them properly, because this is an excellent collection. It's as good as the Whipple, if you saw our video on the Cambridge equivalent of this museum, but it's a smaller, cramped building. So the whole series here of armillary spheres. So there you've got silver and ebony spheres. All these beautiful models of the Copernicus view of the solar system. And different measures, scales. I love these geometrical shapes. They're wooden shapes to explain different shapes in a school class. So you have dodecahedrons and cubes and triangles and all the different types of geometric shapes, along with like these measuring calipers, compasses, different tools. This collection was put together over quite a period of time. It originally was a scientific instrument collection within the Ashmolean, and it grew slowly over time till it was given this space. And at that point, it appears that the way the curator put it, the colleges rumbled through all of their store cupboards and bought out the old experiments that they weren't interested in or using anymore, but actually are fascinating historic pieces. And it is a very large collection. You can see here all these different types of globes and measuring sticks and slide rules. I remember finding a wooden slide rule, an engineering one like this many years ago. And in the back there, beautiful spheres. Here, tick-tock, this is actually a clock. Very old clock, which doesn't appear to work now, but beautiful to see the portions of it. And that's one half of the entranceway. Then in the centre is this magnificent construction. And you look at it and you think, what is it? Well, of course, it's a microscope for George III. It was great for George III to have a microscope, but it was particularly important that it looked like the centrepiece on a fine dinner table made out of silver. And it really is spectacular. Interesting theodolite. Measuring tape there from, looks like ones I've seen from the 1950s that you'd find in your Granddad's garage when you're digging around for a useful measuring tape. Or the ones they used to use at sports, you know, when you throw the shot put or the javelin. They always had some very large leather, hand wound, and beautiful collection of different instruments. It's just a taster in the first gallery. And unfortunately, the top floor is closed at the moment, and that contains the largest collection of Astrolabes. But there is a very good collection here of some of the interesting pieces, some beautiful clocks and watches, and different books. I actually had the opportunity to do a little bit of a tour, and the explanation of these pieces was excellent. There you can see the ivory device is actually for measuring time, sunrise, sunset, when the hours of the day. It's like a pocket sundial on steroids, and not really a device I've seen before, but quite a large collection of them. The Astrolabe collection, it's a shame upstairs is closed. I'll have to come back when they finally reopen it, hopefully with the new museum format. But they have 170 astrolabes. And astrolabes were actually not designed by the Arabs, fascinatingly enough. The Arabs loved knowledge, and they found as many Greek books as they could, and they found the instruction for making an astrolabe, and then they built it. So that Greek knowledge and that Arabic thirst for knowledge and understanding, and obviously the need to know when the sun rises, when the sun sets, the direction to Mecca, all of the different geometric requirements. And they documented it, built it, and the astrolabe became a common scientific tool again after centuries of being forgotten. There's a very interesting explanation of how vaccines are produced and looking at different doses. If you saw our video on the Fleming Museum in London, they start off with a flask. And here you've got a flask with 4 doses, with I think it's 16 doses. And then there's a small tank. And this small tank produces 1600 doses. And then you go to the deep tank, which presumably wasn't interesting enough and wouldn't fit in this room. So you get a good feel for the scaling of doses. And there's a lot of information on the walls about the COVID vaccine and fighting back, creating antibodies, ways in which vaccines work. Some interesting explanations. And hopefully it'll be more of the same when this expands, because upstairs the astronomy section isn't really there. It's locked off at the moment. You can't go up the flight of stairs past the painting of the moon. And it really is an amazing... It's a sketch of the moon that looks like a photograph. It's so detailed. But when we come back, hopefully they'll have expanded the museum, and they have over 1700 items, so plenty of space for some wonderful additions to the collection. Heading up the stairs, some very interesting telescopes. You can imagine some of the earliest telescopes were built here and used by Oxford scientists, and obviously don't impress everyone. But very interesting old telescopes, and interesting ways, the way that they measured the angles, and they built that on as an addition to the structure of a telescope. We're down into the basement of this, and this is purpose built. You have to remember, this is the first purpose built museum building in the world, dating back 1683. Here's a lovely model of the solar system. You can put a coin in to turn the machine. And you can see the moon spins around the earth, rotates, revolves around itself whilst rotating around the sun. And head into the main downstairs room. Series of cabinets, and down at the end is Einstein's Blackboard from when he visited in 1931. Here's a camera obscura with a useful picture explaining how it works, and in the background there's a picture. The word camera actually has nothing to do with photography. It comes from a camera obscura, a room that creates a picture upside down on the wall that you can then sketch, so you get the dimensions right. But it's the same process with light through a lens in a camera. If you ever use DSLR, without that mirror, it would be upside down. If you use one with a scope, not one where you're actually looking at the screen. Now here's Lawrence of Arabia's camera. This is the camera he took with him when he was out in Arabia. And some fascinating electric experiments here. There's a lot of experiments. It's a lot like the Faraday Museum that we visited, if you saw that video recently, where there's a mixture of experimental equipment and explanatory equipment, so equipment for lectures, and a series of here syringes, and looks like you'd put down a drain to the worm to clean a drain. Is actually an early stethoscope. Now you have a bunch of predecessors of, or precursors of, the stethoscope was the ear trumpet. So you hold it to your one end to the ear, one end to the chest, and it's a stethoscope. Series of weighing scales and machines and equipment for fabricating doses of medicines, and syringes for dispensing the medicine. Here you have the pestle and mortar for grinding up the mix. Then you use those sort of corrugated boards for making the pills. And there's even a little box of pills and materials in the corner there. There's a good explanation. It explains the whole process of making medicines back in the, I guess, early 19th century. And you can see a little file. If I move the camera to the right, hopefully, you can see a file holding a paper strip, almost like a cigarette paper you see at the back there, where the different pills would be put in that and wrapped so that the dose was kept dry. Here's all the bark powder, and the back a model of an eye to explain the eye to people. A student's model. There's really quite an eclectic mix of everything from experiments to measuring tools to observational tools to demonstrations, models, things that allow us to understand and explain the universe, not just, and even here, real life application. This is an artificial hand. There's a trepanning saw on the right if you fancy a go, and that little hammer for breaking open things like the sternum. It's actually a mortuary tool for carrying out post-mortem. So if you've ever wondered what you need, here is a very conveniently and neatly boxed set of post-mortem tools, and they do look a little gruesome. Really lovely little collection of medical paraphernalia. If you're interested in that, I definitely check out our videos on the Hunterian. It's a nice short video. And also the second video on the Science Museum. They have an excellent collection which used to be at the Wellcome collection, but for some reason they gave away this or they put on loan their fascinating collection of medical historical items. Here, really quite unusual collection, mainly around surgical and procedural tools. It's an interesting room, this one, very eclectic mix. At the end of this cabinet is very interesting equipment for anaesthetism, early cleansing and cleaning and anaesthetist tools. And that is a bracket, a hinge, not a hinge, but it's for protecting a knee. Really you can see how much medicine's come on. On the one hand, very advanced. On the other hand, looks quite cyberpunk dated, because these are very old pieces. This floor has probably the best examples of application of science and historical figures from around Oxford. The upstairs, the top floor, which is closed, is mainly Astrolabes, a lot of medieval and early modern pieces, let's say. Covers a very wide range, and there's some lovely telescopes higher up there. Down here, this is anaesthetism, so you put that in your mouth and the gases would be made in the jar and would come through that pipe, through the mouthpiece, but you'd sleep. Here's a lovely camera. It's a large format. You can see the plate holder there. It hinges over and the glass plate. Slide it into the back and then you control the camera through twisting the lens. And this is some of the pictures that were taken of it. Here, a collection of items related to typhoid and infectious diseases. I believe it's an explanation up at the top about the pumps in Soho. Then there's a small bookshop at the back, but there are other things as well. Behind that is a fascinating wall of obscure scientific instruments which aren't really explained but do look really cool. More samples of electrical, electromagnetism, models of houses. I believe that's an electrostatic demonstration where it makes the dancers spin. Here is fascinating, the Countess of Westmoreland's lodestone. It's a large natural magnet housed within a crown, but it's a demonstration of the power of natural magnetism, that the weight is carried. It's quite a fascinating old piece. And I hope you enjoyed our brief tour of the Oxford Museum of History of Science. It's a beautiful museum on the subject. Is definitely needing that expansion. There's 1,700 items, all rammed into a free-floor building built in the 1660s. So I will definitely be back when they expand and improve the museum, or even if they just open up the third floor, because that is a beautiful floor with some fascinating pieces. And I'd also like to get a look at Marconi's telegraph and the huge collection of astrolabes. So we will be back. Please do like and subscribe, and check out some of the other videos on scientific museums like the Whipple in Cambridge, the Faraday and Fleming museums in London, and the Hunterian Museum, which is particularly interesting if you're into medicine. And we'll be back on Saturday with some history, and next Monday with a museum tour. And as we're in Oxford, You might be able to work out where we're going next Monday. I'll give you a clue. Make a cup of tea. It's a big museum. We're going to take some time, even if we roar around it, but it's not to be missed.